Hello and welcome to Popcorn Dreams. I just watched Underwater, but is it any good? Keep watching to find out. Underwater was directed by William Eubank, written by Adam Kozad and Brian Duffield, and stars Kristen Stewart, Vincent Cassel, and Jessica Henwick. It's about a group of deep-sea drillers whose rig suffers catastrophic damage and they have to escape. But what caused the damage, and what lurks in the murky depths?
Listen carefully. You are now 5,000 miles from land, and you're descending 7 miles to the bottom of the ocean. See you all in a month.
If you've seen Alien or The Descent, then you've pretty much seen this movie. But I think that's pretty obvious from the trailer. But that can be okay. This happens a lot in horror films. After all, Halloween, Friday the 13th, and Nightmare on Elm Street, they're all essentially the same movie. What they do, though, is they offer a different presentation in the way they tell their story. So, does Underwater do that? Does it offer something unique to this genre? No, not really. The visuals and the story structure are very, very familiar. Now, even this could be acceptable if we cared about the characters and if they came up with a story that made us really root for them and for them to get out of the situation they find themselves in. Unfortunately, they decided to leave the characters fairly bland and sort of these very, very broadly drawn stereotypes. In fact, we only have a couple of minutes with Kristen Stewart's character before the action kicks off. In a smarter film, that would be fine, because in the lulls between action beats, we'd have little character moments. Little things where each individual reacts to a thing and reacts to each other in certain ways that reveal themselves to us. But instead, we just get vague stereotypes. TJ Miller is the crew member who reacts with inappropriate humor due to the stress he's feeling. Vincent Cassel is the strong, focused captain who is prepared to go down with his ship if it means saving his crew. Jessica Henwick is the younger, inexperienced crew member who freaks out and loses her mind because of the pressure, but then somehow tries to pull through. And Kristen Stewart is our main heroine, who is really put through the ringer, but keeps on fighting and tries to find a way to solve the problem for her and her crewmates. To their credit, they do try to give the crew, at least some members of the crew, a backstory. Certainly Kristen Stewart and Vincent Cassel's characters both have a slightly more developed background. But the story is moving at such a pace, like they're rushing to get through it, that we don't really have time to dwell, time to stop and think about these moments that are being revealed to us. And because of that, they just feel lightweight. They feel rushed and thrown away, like they don't really matter. And when the director is telling us that these things don't really matter and we don't really need to worry about them, then as an audience we don't really give it any second thought, and then that makes their characters shallow again. I think that's a big problem with the film, actually, is that everything happens at such a pace. We don't have really time to think about what's happening to them or time to really care about the fact that they might not survive the situation they're in. It feels like they were trying to make a roller coaster movie. You know, the kind of action movie where things just kick off straight away and they just keep on going and going and going, and it's the thrill of the action that keeps you entertained, just like being on a roller coaster. That could have worked, but this is partly a horror movie and partly an action movie. So the fact that it's a PG-13, normally I don't care what the rating of a movie is, as long as it's a good story and I care about what's going on. But in this instance, by trying to make it a more visceral thrill ride, because it's PG-13, they can't go all out with the horror. And so it really limits the toolbox that they have to entertain you. There are moments when they try to build atmosphere, but the shallow characters means that it doesn't really work because we don't really care. So when you're trying to build the atmosphere, the biggest part of that is our concern for the characters and what they're going through. If you don't care about the characters, the atmosphere kind of dies. There are examples of films where they've done that with very, very bland stereotype characters, but this is not one of those movies that successfully did that. Again, the pace of the movie also undercuts that constantly. And just to compound that problem, the editing really doesn't help. Certainly a few times early on in the movie, certainly in the first half, something exciting happens where we have like either a jump scare or an action scene seems to be about to kick off, and then they cut away and we see the results of that action without actually seeing what happened. I think they're trying to be clever and sort of tease what's coming later in the movie, but ultimately it just falls flat. And rather than getting us amped up and excited about what's to come, it just makes us not care and we kind of give up on it. I sound really negative about this film, and I kind of am. But I'm kind of biased because I like this genre of movie a lot. So I did kind of enjoy it. When I'm thinking about it later on, I start to see all of the holes in the story, all the holes in the direction, all the holes in the filmmaking. But at the time, I did kind of enjoy myself. And I think the main reason for that is the cast. The cast is excellent. Vincent Cassel is amazing in everything. He's just a great, great actor, and I really love all of his films. Jessica Henwick just has to be standing on screen for me to care about what she's going through. She's got that kind of, well, I guess it's just her face. She just has that kind of adorable quality that makes you want her to be okay. So she's perfect for this kind of movie where we don't have the character development in the script. So just her charisma makes you care about her. And finally, there's Kristen Stewart. She gets a lot of crap on the internet, and I can understand why. Twilight was truly awful, and Snow White and the Huntsman felt like they were just remaking Twilight. But since then, her and Robert Pattinson's careers have kind of had some similarity in that both of them have tried to do smaller, more interesting projects where they can show that they're not just these one-note teen heartthrobs that they were in Twilight. Now, I think Robert Pattinson has succeeded in reinventing himself at this point. I know that when they announced him for Batman, a lot of people went, "Oh, the Twilight guy." But really, if you like film, if you care about film at all, you will have seen that he's been doing a lot of very interesting films. Not least of which last year he was in The Lighthouse. Kristen Stewart has been less successful at reinventing herself, I think, especially considering the amount of crap she still gets on the internet. And also, she has made some pretty terrible movies. But I think she chooses her movies partly because when she made Twilight, one of the things that people said about her was that she didn't emote. She always had the same face, which is fair enough. That's kind of true. She, Kristen Stewart, be happy. Kristen Stewart, be sad.
No.
Okay. But since then, she's, especially in the last couple of years, she's tried to do films where it looks like she's having a lot of fun. Charlie's Angels may have been pretty bad, but she looked like she was enjoying herself, and she looked like, well, actually the whole crew looked like they were enjoying themselves, and that is quite infectious in a lot of ways, and quite often that can save a movie. Oceans 12 and 13, I'm looking at you. In Underwater, she carries this film. I think she does it quite successfully. She is actually quite charismatic. If you only know her from the Twilight films, then you're laughing right now and you're saying, what are you even talking about? But genuinely, she can be quite... She can make you care with actually very little work on her part. She can make you root for her character. But they made one mistake in this movie. You cannot have Kristen Stewart do narration. You can't do it. Because the moment you do, it makes people like me who have seen the Twilight movies think of those movies.
I'd never given much thought to how I would die. But dying in the place of someone I love seems like a good way to go.
Her voice, without her face being visible, then sounds very monotone and bored. And that made me laugh in this movie, which was a shame, because right at the end of the movie, you want it's supposed to be a moment where you really care about what's happened, and it's kind of sad, but it's kind of happy. You're fully invested, or at least you're supposed to be fully invested in what has happened and what's gone on. And so you're supposed to have this sort of oddly emotional moment. And in comes some more narration. Actually, the film bookends with narration, which again is a very Twilighty thing to do. And that monotone comes in. You can see her on the screen, but she's not saying the narration. And so then it just makes you laugh. It makes you remember all of the things that you don't really like about Kristen Stewart. And that jars you straight out of the film and makes it immediately worse than it otherwise would be. You can't do that if you want people to take you seriously. Stop it, please. Stop it now. Kristen Stewart, if they say, hey, let's do narration, just tell them no, you're better than that. So the thing that saves this movie is that the cast elevates what they have to work with. I feel like in the hands of a more experienced director, we could have had a really cool, creepy, atmospheric monster movie. As it stands, we have a film that I kind of enjoyed despite its many flaws, mostly because of the actors involved with it, but there are too many flaws for me to recommend this movie. Enjoyable in places, but shallow characters and a very familiar plot let it down. Go watch Alien or The Descent instead, and wait for this to come out on your streaming service of choice. If you like this review, then click on one of the videos floating next to my head. Don't forget to subscribe, comment in the sections down below, and like and share our video. And I will see you next time on Popcorn Dreams.